what's up, Twinkie Wiener Dog sandwiches?
Where do you buy those?
The Weird Al's pre-vegan restaurant. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Podmas Cast Night, the 2 Minutes to Late Night podcast. You're sitting down with 2/5 of the 2 Minutes Late Night Writers Room. I'm Drew Kaufman. You know me as the guy who talks about the Beatles jerking off. I'm here with good friend, podcast co-host, former roommate for 4 years, Jordan Olds.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Drew. Hey, thank you for having me as a guest on the show that we do together.
Yeah, it's nice. It's good. Jordan and I, we've never really done like a one-on-one thing like this. Not if you don't count like when we lived together and we would stay up till 3 a.m. complaining about Spider-Man 3.
Yep.
Which will probably happen.
We got to just do, I think we need to have a podcast just called the Spider-Man 3 podcast.
Spider-Man 3 ruined our lives.com.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would love that.
So what we're doing is this year we're trying to do some more cool stuff, do things a little differently. So we're doing the classic, this is a shitty album. We're going to talk about how shitty it is. But we're trying to do something a little more positive and enriching. So what we've done is Jordan and I have traded 2 albums that we both really like that the other person isn't familiar with, and we're going to talk about them. But before we get into that, Jordan and I both had pretty interesting weekends. Yeah, Jordan just had a really interesting weekend. He just played a Van Halen's Day set at St. Vitus. It was you on guitar. It was Shauna Potter from War on Women as David Lee Roth. It was Billy Reimer from Dillinger Escape Plan on drums. And our good friend John Heaney, who's just an all-around good dude playing bass.
Yeah, he just rules.
Yeah, how was that?
Dude, if you know me, just a dream of mine has been to do a Van Halen covers. I've wanted to be in a Van Halen cover band since I heard Van Halen. So
yeah,
it's been just decades. I just never thought I would, find the right way to do it. And it was pretty surreal how it came together. Like George from Vitus has been pitching me a like Van Halen's Day idea forever. He's like, you should put together like a Van Halen cover band. And when we did Fest this year, and like our little pop punk karaoke band did like a set at Fest, and when Shauna asked us to do Ain't Talking About Love by Van Halen, I got really excited, and we had a really great time. And then that kind of like planted a seed of like, maybe we should just do a really goofy Van Halen cover set. And as it just kind of built, like then, I don't know, like I met and became friends with Billy Reimer. And then I pitched the idea to him and he thought it sounded really fun. And then it just built into this really goofy cover band. And we played the set and it was so much fun. I had a great time. I had the best time. I got like overalls made for it, which I'm going to wear every day now. I found it was also the first show I've ever played with like guitar pedals, like a lot of them, like a big pedal board. And I love the overalls and I love the pedal board. But I hated them that night because my pedal board kept shorting out. So I had this, I bought like a whammy pedal to do the fucking Van Halen dive bombs on guitar just to make it go, make it sound like a motorcycle. And since the pedal went out, I didn't get to make one dive bomb the whole fucking night. And I was pretty pumped about that. And I didn't realize, that Eddie always plays with his overalls with his strumming arm, like that strap is unbuttoned, and I didn't realize that for a while, like when we played the show, and now I know why is because the strap slips down your arm and traps your strumming arm. So there was like a while where I was we were playing like Jamie's Crying and like the strap slipped down and I was like, oh fuck, oh no, and my arm got trapped for a little while.
That's so funny because I knew that he did that because I've seen it in every photo and I just thought it was because it was the 80s, like I thought it's just his favorite just thought it was
titty.
Cool. Yeah,
this is my favorite nipple.
Yeah.
But no, it's like that's why he did that. I don't know why. It maybe in my head, I'm like, dude, you can just like not wear a shirt. Or like
he didn't. I don't know. He took it off. I think.
he wanted to make the overalls work, and I get it because it was really fun for a little while, but just I got my arm trapped for a little while, and my pedals didn't work, but every other part of it was the most fun. It was the sweatiest show.
Yeah.
I think it's everyone in the audience was like, that was the sweatiest show that's ever happened at St. Vitus. It was the most responsibility I've ever had being a part of like a band. It was weird because I had to sing and I had to like make all of these like different noises with my guitar. And usually when I play on a stage, like I'm like, oh, my job is to jump off of stuff and make weird faces. And I had to like really strategically pick moments to do that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I had to do like harmonies and backups. We're going to release like probably a video collage of some of it because we only had one camera. And also, fuck you if you weren't there. You don't get to see the whole thing if you weren't there.
I'm really jealous. I wasn't there. I couldn't be there. And I watched it on Instagram. I was like waiting. I had to work that night, and like I'm waiting for the train to come home. And I'm just like on Instagram. I just see 4,000 posts of Shauna rolling around on the floor in American flag tights and she had a shirt on with a men's hairy chest.
Yeah,
it was the best thing. And you guys got Tom Smo to play saxophone during Jump instead of a keyboard. That was the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, well, we were talking. Van Halentine's Day is Tom Smo's like thing that he came up with when he would host karaoke and stuff at St. Vitus, and they'd done it a couple of times. They had like a real Van Halen cover band, like
real.
Well, here by real I mean like they're from Long Island and they have groupies for a Van Halen cover band.
By real Van Halen cover band, you mean over 50?
Yeah, over 50. Yeah, they wore wigs and shit. And it was sad, but they're really good at it. So that was like the first year that they did, and then they had like a not so great cover band the next year, and then it's just been a while. I think it's been like 2 years since they've done it, and so like we kind of revived it, and we want to like keep it like kind of a yearly thing because I think just as the day after Valentine's Day is just going to be Van Halentine's Day.
That's awesome. I think it'll be cool. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So that was that. Yeah, we wanted to get Tom in there, and we didn't. I learned just how to do all of Jump on guitar because I was like, we can't. No one knows how to play keyboard. No one can play that keyboard solo. That's going to be nuts. I hadn't actually figured out how I was going to do the keyboard solo on guitar because I watched like a YouTube tutorial of a guy doing it, and it sounds like mush. Even a guy who's teaching a tutorial of like how to do the keyboard solo, it sounds like none. It's just,
of course,
yeah, it's just a mess. So I was like, oh, this is fucked. And then like Tom hit me up and he was like, if you guys like need help or anything or like a second guitar, and we talked about stuff. I was like, oh, do you like play guitar or instrument? He's like, I also have like a saxophone. And then I pitched him playing saxophone for Jump, that it would be pretty funny. And it turns out it was so goddamn fun.
That's
it was
awesome.
My favorite.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear how that actually sounded.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
It's like, like probably like Real Big Fish, but also with just like on fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we were at Fest, Katie and Jeremy convinced me to go see Mustard Plug, and they came out to Jump. Like they just decided to play the song, and I freaked out and I started jumping up and down and I ran over to the stage, and then like right as the vocals were supposed to kick in, they played one of their songs, and I went back and got a hot dog and just lived the rest of my life.
You're really like fuck, and then eat real mustard instead of extra instead of listen to mustard.
Yeah. Ugh.
Disgusting. Yeah. What did you do this weekend, man?
Dude. So here's a funny story. So we have a friend who is currently working for Whose Line Is It Anyways? So he has been all week saying like, hey, you got to come by. I'll get you in the green room. And I thought it was just like, oh, he wanted me to go see the show. What I didn't realize was that he wanted me to just hang out with him because he's bored at work and his job is just Whose Line Is It Anyways? So last night at like 8:30 at night I drive into the CBS lot, which is an actual television lot, which is still bizarre that they would let me in. I'm just like, hi, my name is Drew Kaufman, and I'm here for Whose Line Is It Anyways? I'm VIP. And they were like, yeah, you are. And they gave me like a pass. And I'm just like walking around this lot where they shot like Third Rock from the Sun and Seinfeld and Will and Grace, and I only know that they shot those shows there because I'm playing Pokemon Go as I'm walking. And like there's little landmarks, like the little Third Rock from the Sun plaque. You can spin a little Pokestop and get some Pokeballs. But yeah, cool. So I go in and I'm in I'm in just like backstage, just walking around like while they're doing their thing. Like, I mean, they so the way they shoot like Whose Line Is It Anyways is that they improvise for like 5 hours and then they chop that up and they make it into 5 episodes. It's crazy. Yeah. And so like they improvise for like a little bit and then someone's taking detailed notes and getting grabs of how the cameras looked, and then they go back and they do pickups and they reset the camera. And a pickup, if you don't know, is like basically like, oh, Colin, we forgot to get a shot of you squeezing Wayne Brady's balls. Can you do that again? And they're like, yeah, absolutely. And they make jokes with the audience. And then like Ryan Stiles talks about his dick and just all this crazy stuff. And I can talk about this because I didn't sign an NDA. I don't know why. But yeah, so they're just, you know, but it's still improvised and it's really funny. It's just they have to go back in for camera reasons because someone will do something funny when there's not a camera on them.
That's so crazy. I assumed that if it's a live CBS show that they would just have like the set. It's weird because from us doing our show, we're like the whole time when we shoot our show is like, how do people make 3 camera shoots work? And the answer is they don't.
They don't. Dude, it's crazy. We have more cameras than a major television show.
That I knew. I knew we had more. We have more cameras than than Colbert.
Yeah. We shoot, if you're curious, we shoot with we have 7 Sony Alpha Series cameras and 1 or 2 GoPros, but who gives a shit? But what's even crazier is that we have better food than Whose Line Is It Anyways? Because part of the reason that I was like walking around was they were just like, eat the food. No one's going to eat it. You eat the food. So I ate so much food because it was funny and it was just all like Trader Joe's shit. I had like a ham sandwich and a million biscotti and an entire thing of almonds. But then the funniest part is that I over the winter, I babysat my crust punk friend's rats, and he's moving to Portland, and he was like, "Yo, he's a tattoo artist. He's like, yo, we gotta do an exchange because you watched my rats." So the night before, my buddy John tattooed my ass. So I got the "Party's Over" Against Me lyrics.
You finally got it?
Yeah, I have the "Party's Over."
You've been talking about that. I think since I've known you.
Yeah, well, you know, it's one of those things where if you have a disposable income, you might get a tattoo on your ass. But if you don't have a disposable income, you have to watch rats.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got my ass tattooed by my crust punk friend who gave me punk lyrics on my butt. And then I had to deal with that as I was at Whose Line Is It Anyway? So I had to go into the green room bathroom and rub Aquifer on my ass. After eating Colin Mockery's food. It was cool. It was really, really weird experience. I stole something. I'm not allowed to post a picture of it for a year, but I stole something from Whose Line Is It Anyway, and I feel really good about that.
Yeah, I haven't been able to. I visited the Parks and Rec set once, and I took a bunch of props because my friend was like the prop guy there, and I lost a lot of it. But I really wanted to post a picture of it. My goal was to is because he was the prop guy on that show. I was like, I really want to steal John Glazer's nameplate, like from when he's a judge. He's like a judge on that show. I was like, steal me his little nameplate thing. That'll be really funny.
Also, quick before,
did you get the ice cream cone part of the which? Is the party's over? Did you do the spilled ice cream cone or the kicking bull?
I didn't do any because it turns out that you don't have as much space on your ass as you thought you do. So I just got the words. I got like really fancy script. The party's over on my ass, and I think that's fine. And I can't see it, and it's just for me. And maybe if I go to Cancun.
When you turn 40 and decide to and have a crisis and decide that you are going to get into pegging, then that person will also know.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I mean,
I'm like I don't know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna, I've had sex twice, so I think I've had enough sex in my life, and I'll be okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I feel like that's just gonna be. I feel like that's weirdly gonna be a thing for like 40-year-olds that they don't talk about, is that you reach like 40 and then you have a crisis about your life and who you're with, but you also you're like, I have a prostate and I want to use it.
Yeah.
Before it gives me cancer.
Before it kills me.
Okay.
Wait, before we talk about the music, because we're going to do that, I promise everybody.
Yeah.
I just found out that Lorne Michaels, literally just found this out right before we were doing this. Lorne Michaels is apparently producing a movie about the guy who shot Osama bin Laden. And Jordan, I need you to do a Don Pardo voice introducing everyone in that movie.
It's the movie about the guy who killed Osama bin Laden. Starring Osama bin Laden. Dick Cheney. No, wait. Is it Obama era where Osama bin Laden?
It's
Condoleezza Rice.
Nope, that's still George Bush.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait, no, wasn't she sort of a part of the... All right, no.
Maybe. I don't know.
All right. Hillary Clinton.
There you go.
Barack Hussein Obama. Probably drone warfare. A white guy with PTSD. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, at least we got to that before everybody else did.
Yeah.
This podcast will be released in 6 months.
Yep.
So basically, Jordan, I gave you At the Drive-In's Relationship a Command.
Yes.
It's one of my favorite albums. And Jordan gave me Badmotorfinger by Soundgarden.
That was the trade.
Yeah, Jordan, you want to go first? You want to talk about what you experienced listening to at the drive-in?
Yeah, so well, first off, like I the original intention was to like listen to like a band that we hadn't like listened to before really, but we've known each other for so long that we've just like shoved each other's music down each other's throats. So I didn't think it was like it was going to be possible to find a band that we hadn't really checked out, but I realized that the only At the Drive-In out, I've never listened to Relationship of Command, which is that's like their biggest album of their At the Drive-In career. And I come from like Colorado, where honestly At the Drive-In just wasn't a thing. I think on the West Coast and the East Coast they had like a huge following, but like honestly no one knew in my town knew who they were before the Mars Volta. And I remember just reading about the Mars Volta, and I think my friend told me that they had an old band called At the Drive-In. And it was like I've never been like a really like an internet guy. Like I always have like a friend who finds stuff out on the internet for me. Like that's you.
Yeah.
Like I have you now who tells me what happens.
Did you
on the
hear
internet.
that they're making a movie about Osama bin Laden and it's being made by Lorne Michaels?
Oh my God, that's crazy.
I read it on the internet.
I wonder who's going to play the gun. But no, so I just heard the name At the Drive-In, and like how I do that's how I found records, is like someone tells me the name of a band and then I just go to the record store and I don't really know what record I'm supposed to buy, so I just buy stuff that has the name of the band on it. So I had to me getting into music at that age was really weird. And so what I did with At the Drive-In is I bought the two albums that like visually appealed to me the most. Like I saw Relationship of Command at like the Angelo's Music that I went to, and I thought it looked like it was gonna be like it looks like it could be a nu metal album, like a Chevelle or whatever, and I'm like 15 and I'm not into that anymore. So I bought Via and In Casino Out because I thought they looked the most punk. And so that's what I knew of them.
If you don't know that band very well, the album art for Vaya is a boombox, and it's like inverted with a big orange background, and orange is a pretty color. In Casino Out, it like looks like someone's weird tattoo of a bunch of satellite dishes.
Yeah, it kind of looks like an old an old PacSun shirt with no jokes on it.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. Yeah, it looks like it would say like skateboarding is not a crime, and it's like a stick figure flipping off a cop. But Relationship of Command has the worst art because it's supposed to be like the Trojan warriors, like the Trojan horse, but for some reason they only show the horse's legs. Like there's a whole bunch of horse, like a spider made out of horse legs.
There's like a horse head, and then there's like it's like, and then it's an urban city, and then there's like the bottom of a carriage and a couple horse legs. So I think it was like it was just at that time I was like, this looks like what the fuck. Like it's got like Hurley font, so I wasn't it.
Yeah.
And I had heard the only song I had heard off of the album was like One Arm Scissor, because that's the single.
Yeah.
And I went into that, like I had always like thought At the Drive-In was like pretty good. Like I was like, okay, yeah, it's like messy. It's just like really messy, like avant-garde punk. And this is what I had always, I knew I had friends who were in bands that sounded like the Via EP and In Casino Out. And like, until I heard Relationship of Command, I had never really heard the full idea of like what this was supposed to sound like. And I heard this record. And I honestly think it's a fucking masterpiece. It is one of the most It is one of the most incredible punk records ever created. It's one of the most incredible rock records. It's an unbelievable album. It's straight up a masterpiece. I now understand everything that they did in like the past. I was like, it's supposed to sound like this.
Yeah.
Like the messy notes make sense because they finally have like the production to like really put it into context of like, here's why this sounds this way. Yeah. And I think it's brilliant. The songwriting is the best songwriting they've done as that band. I don't know if this is like I have to like go back and listen to the other albums. I don't know if this is still like I could listen to like a Via or In Casino Out again, and maybe those are my favorite albums of theirs. But this is unquestionably like there's a difference between favorite and best, and this is their best.
Oh yeah, it's definitely their best. I think In Casino Out is my favorite just because it's like sloppy and weird, and they take crazy chances. But this album is like so well polished, even though it's not. That's what's so amazing.
Yeah. That's why it's incredible.
Did you watch any of the videos so they did 2 live performances they were on Conan O'Brien and they were on Letterman, and they're insane.
Yeah, I remember I saw them do One Arm Scissor.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is this fucking rules. And I didn't until I heard the album, I didn't know what they thought their band sounded like.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is incredible. And I heard so much. I now see what is so influential about this band that happened to like post-punk and like emo music. Like this is 100% everything what post-punk was like. This is the best version I've heard of a band that sounds like this. Like Sunny Day Real Estate. Anything. This is the greatest version of that. Oh yeah, it's the smartest.
And it's also like the high watermark too, where like you can see where everything after this in this kind of world of like alternative post-hardcore, like because they're just as close to like Rage Against the Machine as they are like Hatebreed, you know, like they're just this mix of everything. And I think like everything afterwards has kind of never really hit that kind of
Yeah.
crazy energy. And the craziest thing about this
completely
album,
get it, yeah.
the craziest thing about this album is that so it was on Fearless, which is like an umbrella of Universal, and they made them remix the album. So the original mix is like, people always talk about like how raw and energetic it sounds because they recorded it live, and apparently like the original mix is insane. And the only way that you can hear what the original mix sounds like is that extra track at the very end of the album. There's a song called Catacombs, and that wasn't on the original release. And I remember I didn't hear that song until I was 22. Like I had been listening to At the Drive-In for like 8 years, and I thought I knew every song. And then they released this song, and it's just the loudest, most intense thing. It sounds so much better than the other songs. It's crazy.
That's crazy. I like Catacombs. To be honest, I like that I like the mix of this album. I get why the band probably don't like the album. I also don't know a lot about the band, but I like that the record sounds like this. I love that it is a polished mess. I think that is beautiful. I think it's just really it allows me to like fully see what they're hearing when they're writing it. And I think that is often like a shame in a lot of punk, is you don't really, even when you get the product of what it is, like you still aren't really hearing what like the band is actually wants you to or might be hearing in their head.
Yeah.
And I think like the high production value of this album serves the album.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot, because there's like surprising stuff like one thing I remember hearing from this album that wasn't One Arm Scissor is I've heard the bass riff of Quarantined played by so many bassists that I've known forever. I think Heaney plays it all the time.
Yeah. I don't even play bass, and I can play that. I can play 2 songs on bass, and one of them is Quarantined.
Well, I loved it.
It's great.
I loved the rip, but I actually didn't know it was an At the Drive-In song. I thought it was like a fucking, I thought it was a Black Sabbath song that I've never heard. So when that song started, I was like, I expected the guitars to come in and play the bass riff, to just do like a, I 100% thought that's what was going to happen. But then the guitars are just creating like a twinkling like chord melody that just is like letting the bass line float through. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, and the way the drums kick in too is like very different than you think they would with that bass line.
Yeah. Which is because of, I think it might have just been my expectation for the bands that I've been in and the people who have like played that riff, but it was really cool. And I think that song, that the way that song needs to sound, I think if it was less polished, it wouldn't serve it as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, especially and that's probably it's my favorite songs on the album, I think. I don't know if we're at this point.
No, you can go for it. It's fun because you're going to say the name, and I've known this album for half of my life, and I still won't know which song you're talking about because the album names, they don't make a lick of fucking sense.
Yeah, the names are all over the place.
Well, I'm glad that you liked it. What were your favorite songs? And you can make up the names, and I'll think it's a real song because this whoever, Cedric is such a good vocalist, and he's such a really, really interesting lyricist. Like I think everybody at some point who liked At the Drive-In was like, I can write song lyrics just like that, and it's hard. It's hard to write Jabberwocky. Hard. You can't, because you're just like the instinct to go funny, where you'll just start talking about anything that will make you laugh. Like there's a Mars Volta lyric that is literally, she was a meek hand job in sarcophagus heels. And the way that he says it, you're like, oh, that's not funny. But if I said that, you would think that I was having a stroke at an open mic.
Yeah, I know. 100%. No, there aren't many people that can pull off these lyrics. I think one of the most interesting things about this album is I can hear where people take their influence from the album or from this music, I hear the chords. Like I hear like in One Arm Scissor, the like first chord of that, I'm like, that's Taking Back Sunday's favorite chord in the world.
Oh yeah.
And then I hear like people take like the noodly, like you can hear all the noodly stuff that Thursday is doing in a lot of their stuff.
Yeah.
From this, but what is weird is that I've noticed that just no one stole the cool songwriting from this album. Like no one took the smart shit from this album. Like I don't know the history of like My Chemical Romance, and I actually weirdly like that band a lot. But this is so clearly what Gerard Way's voice sounds like.
Yeah.
Like Gerard Way on at least their earlier stuff is trying to sing like Cedric, or maybe it's intentional, maybe not, but I think that because you have a Cedric, you are able to accept like a Gerard Way kind of voice. But it's a shame that that this band is putting together some of the most inventive music I've ever heard for like for rock, and that people took the weirdest things to influence their really simple music.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because so what happens is basically At the Drive-In releases this album. It gets huge. Like, I mean, it's this is still kind of pre-internet, so it wasn't like as big as it could have been, but they're pretty well known, and they're going on huge tours. This is like 3 years after they were just kind of like driving around in a van that they had to fix themselves. They're playing huge festivals. They played the Big Day Out that Limp Bizkit played, where someone died in the mosh pit. And they were trying to, that was like a big thing that like Cedric would stop the show and get people to stop moshing because he didn't want people to get hurt. He'd call people sheep famously. And I mean, this is 20 years ago. But so they did this album and then they broke up. I think they toured for like a year and then they broke up. And they split into two bands. They split into the Mars Volta. And basically Cedric and Omar, the two Afros, split up and they did a million other projects together. Then everybody else in the band, the drummer, the keyboardist, backup singer, backup guitarist, and the bassist, they split off and they made Sparta. And Sparta is kind of like, if you take this album and you take out everything weird and space rock about it, they're kind of like they're very weird sounding kind of Foo Fighters. And I actually really like Sparta. And then, of course, Cedric and Omar make the Mars Volta, which is like what it sounds like if you were like listening to jazz in a car accident. It's insane. Yeah. It's such a weird, I mean, Mars Volta was really, really important to me because I wore girls' pants. But everybody in the early 2000s, you thought that
I loved them. Yeah.
The first album, Do Last in the Comatorium, was amazing. And then they just would go weirder and weirder and weirder and see like, okay, who's going to stick along for the ride? But they're a great band. But then I think like many people, I knew Mars Volta first, and someone's like, if you like Mars Volta, you should check out At the Drive-In. And At the Drive-In is my favorite band of all time. I love this album.
I completely get it now.
Yeah.
This is, it's weird that I completely understand it now.
Yeah.
It's weird that I've been waiting for. I now see like why people like this kind of music, and it's because I've now heard this album. I think it's given me so much context for, what like a small messy band. It's when you can see something special in them and see what they could sound like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I get a lot. I get why, people would be inspired to just like make weird garage music now.
Yeah. It's also the best thing I think about this album is that it's not a skipper. You listen to it all the way through.
Yeah.
It's such a good album.
Even the fucking, the nonsense like transition stuff, like, hello, Mother Jaguar, I have your cub.
Do you know that's Iggy Pop?
Is it?
That's Iggy Pop, yeah.
That fucking rules. That's like White. It's like how White Zombie got like Iggy Pop to read their weird fucking poetry.
I think anybody can get Iggy Pop. I'm surprised he's not on that Cameo website where you can buy like, hello, Brian, happy 35th birthday, and I just want you to know that Kayla says she's sorry about the strawberries. I don't know what that means. I said I don't do inside jokes. Hang up.
Yeah. Pizza time, pizza time, pizza time.
That one was for us.
That's just for us. I'm going to get seltzer real quick. Hold on.
I'm going to grab a La Croix.
What flavor liqueur do you have?
I got a peach pear La Croix.
Oh, me too, bitch!
Yeah! Like, smash it into the computer screen.
Yeah.
That's staying in there. But I'm really glad that you like this album because
I
was kind of worried that you wouldn't because it's weird and that's the thing that I love the most about it is just how weird it is and strange, and it's like I have two at the drive-in tattoos, and there are only so many like words from that album you can get tattooed because they don't make a lick of sense. You know? Like it's so strange. I love the screaming. There's a really cool performance of I think Mannequin Republic. Again, I don't know which song is which, but it's the one where they scream Manuscript Replica over and over again. And there's a performance where they did that where Cedric plays guitar. And so he's kind of keeping like the rhythm, and then Omar is just basically like running around the studio smashing his guitar into everything, or maybe he's even playing bass on that song. They just would do just all sorts of like crazy stuff, and it's just so weird and interesting. And I love watching them live. I got to see at the drive-in when they reunited, not the first time in 2013 when they had Jim Ward in the band. Jim Ward was like the backup dude who would do like the kind of cleaner vocals. And they played in 2016. I saw them play, and it was amazing. They sounded great. Cedric was still jumping around and salsa dancing, even though he's in his 40s, and God knows I'm in my 30s and my hips are bullshit. So it was crazy. It was really cool. I also it's actually pretty funny because I got to see them because they were playing their tour and everything sold out, and tickets were like $200-$300 scalped. But they didn't sell out in Europe, and I had airplane miles, and it's the whitest, yuppiest, shittiest thing that I've ever done. But I traded in my airplane miles, went to Italy for free, and saw it at the drive-in for the equivalent of $30. It's crazy.
Yeah,
I stayed in a hostel. I shit in a hole in the floor, and it was great. Cool. Italy.
That's awesome.
They don't have toilets some parts.
I remember when you did that because we were roommates, and I was like. I remember we like talked about it. It was like this. You were like, "This is a weird thing that I'm gonna do." I was like, "You have to do this." I remember I said if the Misfits got back together, I would travel wherever to go see them.
Oh my God!
Then we did.
We did that.
And then we literally did that, which was super weird.
Yeah. Because this is pre 2 Minutes to Late Night, I guess.
Yeah, it's pre 2 minutes. It was pre the announcement of the Misfits getting back together.
That's crazy.
I had no idea. But it gives, I feel like it is necessary to get, I feel like this album is like kind of proof, like, because I've never really been into just a lot of noise rock. Yeah. A lot of my, like, I like some of it, but a lot of the time I'm just like, I'm not on enough drugs or to like listen to the shit you're making. So, but this is like me hearing this album and loving this album, I think is like a real testament to just like the right album can get anyone into any genre of music. Yeah. I feel like there is the right metal album that will like make my mom understand metal, I think. But she won't.
I think it's Mutoid Man. I really think it's Mutoid Man.
For moms?
Yeah.
Yeah,
dude.
I think probably for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about my mom, but like maybe I think that there is like the right thing for somebody, and like this makes me get why people want to start other bands that could eventually be. I don't think anyone is like actually smart enough in the right weird way to create something like this ever again.
No.
It's kind of I also realize like now learning about this band that they like broke up right after this, that's very similar to there seems to be a lot of similarities between this band and Soundgarden.
Yeah, so actually I was hoping that we would get there, like kind of talking about so tell me about Soundgarden. So I really liked that album a lot. And I feel like you obviously know a lot more about it than I do. So I want to hear like your thoughts about it. I really liked it.
Yeah. Well, this is so this is not my favorite. Badmotorfinger is not my favorite Soundgarden album. That is Louder Than Love, but I think we've listened to that. We listened to that in the BMW at Series Fest.
We did.
Whether you remember that or not, I didn't think it was fair to do it. This is also it's not their best either, because that's Super Unknown, where they won all the fucking Grammys and it's got like Black Hole Sun on it. Like whether it's your favorite or not, like that's the best one. But this one I think is like their most interesting, because their songwriting, they are just throwing every idea at the wall, and it's really cool. Like, so Soundgarden is it's like a really weird story. Like, because it starts in like, they started in like 1984, and it's just in Seattle where just people are just joining any band at all. Like, just a couple of dudes are just like, you want to just like jam and see what happens, and like, you know, Chris Cornell like meets I don't know, like the guy who plays bass, because they're roommates, and then like they like meet Kim, the guitar player, through them, and then they just started jamming. And Chris Cornell was playing drums at like the time. Yeah. And Chris Cornell didn't really think he could sing, since he was in a choir when he was a kid, and then he hit puberty and he was like, my voice changed, so I just stopped singing because I didn't think I could sort of do anything with it. And then he figured out he developed like his really loud falsetto voice, because he would try to sing to Soundgarden, and they would play so loud that he would have to like push his voice so much to just like get it to sound like that. An interesting thing about Chris Cornell's voice is this: Badmotorfinger is the first time that like Chris Cornell's voice sounds like the Chris Cornell that we know.
Oh, really?
Where he's like doing like that kind of like mid-range, like kind of like Cage! Like on the early Soundgarden stuff, he's mostly just doing a high shrieking Led Zeppelin vocal the whole time.
Yeah.
On like Ultra Omega and Louder Than Love, he's just high. He's doing the piercing high voice the entire time. So this is the first time you hear him do like the vocals that are on like Rusty Cage. The first time you hear him really do that voice.
Dude, Rusty Cage was such a cool song.
Isn't that a fucking sick song?
Yeah, I didn't really know Soundgarden. I liked Nirvana a lot, and I was born in '87. So by the time I got into Nirvana, they were dead, all of them.
Yeah.
Dave Grohl had crashed his plane into Space Mountain. Chris Novoselic had drank a whole bunch of Drano and just shat out his organs. And Kurt Cobain was still alive and very much in love with his wife. But no, I liked Nirvana a lot, and the thing that I really liked about Nirvana was just how weird and how they would, all their songs were actually really different. Like, It Smells Like Teen Spirit is a fucking hook, and it's great. And I actually think that people who shit on that song are dumb. But all of their other songs are so much better, and they do so much weird stuff. So I only knew Soundgarden, like I only knew like their singles. I didn't own any of their albums. I knew Black Hole Sun, which is a really cool song, and I knew what they played on the radio, And I never heard anything off this album other than Jesus Christ Pose, and I know I didn't like that song because it was kind of slower and not as interesting. And I think Jesus Christ Pose was probably my least favorite song on this album. But
really?
Yeah, but I think that's a good thing because everything else I liked so much more. I thought the stuff that sounded the most like not like their singles, that didn't sound like Black Hole Sun, that didn't sound like Jesus Christ Pose, I thought were the best songs on the album. Some of the best songs I ever heard. Like I loved Mind Riot. I loved Holy Water, Face Pollution. When the saxophones come in and Face Pollution,
right?
I couldn't believe that. That was so insane to me that I would never have expected Soundgarden to have saxophones.
I know. Well, the weird thing is that I think the single choices on this album are the singles on this album are Rusty Cage, Outshined, and Jesus Christ Pose. And
Rusty Cage was a single? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Rusty Cage is a single. Outshined, I think, is the most traditional, even though it's is the most traditional sounding single. I think the fact that Jesus Christ Pose is the most famous song on this album is fucking insane because it is in a odd time signature. The whole thing is in minor chords. It's like when you really think, because we've heard that song our whole life, like it becomes one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's one of their songs. But when you really think about it as a single, it's one of the oddest choices for it. There's like no fucking chorus. I found Soundgarden in high school. My first concert ever was Audio Slave. Because I liked Rage Against the Machine a lot.
Yeah.
And I liked that. I heard they started a new band, and I was like, sick. And that was my introduction to like Chris Cornell is just like Rage Against the Machine riffs with him shrieking over them, and I was like, this fucking rules. And then I went back and like heard some early Soundgarden, but I had never heard Jesus Christ Pose until I heard the Dillinger Escape Plan do a cover of it.
I do like the Dillinger cover.
Yeah, well, it's also exactly the same, but I assumed that their cover was just crazy.
Yeah.
I assumed that, but no, it's like pretty, because it's all, I assumed that it was like a Dillinger cover, so that it was going to be like their cover of Aphex Twin. But no, the Jesus Christ Pose is also just a fucking bananas song that's really different. It like follows, like the guitar parts follow like Kim's kind of sensibility for like taking like an aggressive approach to like a major progression, which is nuts. But it's I don't know. I think it's really bananas. The other weird thing about this album is, or just about Soundgarden in general. Like I remember hearing Chris Cornell on Mark Maron when everybody listened to Mark Maron.
Folks, if you're like me, you like people who scream. Lollapalooza, lock the gates.
Yeah. And he's talking about the weirdest thing is because like famously also with Soundgarden, they release, like at the drive-in, Soundgarden releases their biggest album. They win a fucking Grammy. They decide, they look at, and they break up. And most people thought it was just that they all fucking hated each other. And that they wanted to, and they didn't want to play together anymore. Because of the history of bands. And like, Mark Maron brings up, like, when they were reuniting, it's like, so I heard, like, you guys got back together. I heard there was, like, some shit between you and Kim. And he was like, there wasn't, but I've read that before. Because, he's like, I read it a lot because that seems to be, that's like the really easy narrative for bands is that, you know, there's a band that sounds like us, so, or like there's a rock band with an interesting guitar player and a singer, and so they assume every song is written by the guitar player, and that all the words are written by the singer, and they fucking hate each other. But that's weirdly not how Soundgarden works. It's like most of the songs are written by like the drummer and the bassist. Like famously, they got a new bassist for Badmotorfinger, and he wrote so much of this album.
Really?
Yeah, this guy joined the band and then is just throwing shit at the wall with them, and they have like such low ego about it that they're like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's like a collective idea, which I think is really cool. I guess to like start a little bit at the beginning with them, like I think it's really funny that Chris Cornell, every band he ever had, the band name fucking sucks.
Yeah, the worst band names.
The shittiest band name. But the funniest thing about the band name with this band is because they started in the 80s, where you know, Seattle bands are trying to create a music scene that is anti anti like hair metal, and Soundgarden has like is playing with bands that are like, it's like the Meat Puppets and like Melvins, that kind of shit. So when people see Soundgarden, they're like, this is gonna be some hippie bullshit. And then they see a band that sounds like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and Sonic Youth at the same time. They're like, what the fuck? So they like gained a following because they were like, because people were like, this is nuts. They like liked that the band name was like a cheesy hippie band name, but they sounded so fucking crazy and weird. And they were also they were also just a band that reminded people of what was cool about metal bands. What like they like when we talked in that other episode about like the Van Halen effect and stuff, like or you know, like they what people took away from like Led Zeppelin and like Van Halen is that you have to have an expert guitar player and you wear tight pants, and like that's the whole fucking thing. But what like Chris talks about with like he's like, people forget that with like Led Zeppelin, if you ever saw like Jimmy Page like play a show, he didn't fucking give a shit if he like fucked up his guitar solo or whatever. Or even Eddie Van Halen is drunk the whole time. Every live video of Van Halen, he fucks up. He starts playing in the like in one of the famous Unchained videos. He just starts playing the verse way too early and then has to go back into the riff. But they're, you know, it was cool that they could blend like this old 70s sound and this new sound that was happening into something really fucking unique and cool. And they were one of the, I think they're like at the start of Sub Pop. They're the second album released by.
Are they really?
Their first EP is the first like Sub Pop release that isn't a compilation.
That's really cool.
And it's because they turned down, they got like a major label offer. They were the first, like, you know, a lot of people talk about how like, you know, it's like Mother Love Bone and stuff is the first band to get like major label attention. It's actually, Soundgarden was the first band that got like looked at. But they were always, they were under like the kind of punk grunge mentality where they just don't want to be signed. They don't want to be like owned by anybody. So they turn it down for a very long time. They and then they, you know, they kind of just slowly like work their way into being like a major label band. Like they release everybody was talking about, they release Louder Than Love and they get to go on tour with like Guns N' Roses and Black Sabbath or whatever, or something like that, or like Metallica or something. But it's because people were talking about the album more than it actually was like popular.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I can't imagine them opening for Guns N' Roses. I feel like no one would have a good time.
Apparently, they did. I don't know. Like, I love the idea of like a world where like you can see a Soundgarden. And, well, that's the thing about Soundgarden. Like one before Chris died, he talked about how like he was like, it was cool that I was in a band at the end of my career where I could, you know, take the Arcade Fire on tour and then also open for Black Sabbath on their last tour ever. He was like, that's fucking nuts that I get to do that. And it's because of how weird and diverse Soundgarden is. Like they're you know, it's hard to put them in a hole because they just try so much stuff. Like each album kind of sounds really different. And then like at the drive-in, yeah, they have their biggest hit and then they break up.
Yeah. There's a lot of similarities, I think, because the other thing too is like you and I both found these bands because we knew their later bands.
Yeah,
like I
totally.
knew Audioslave, and I liked Audioslave, but
yeah,
but this is so much better than Audioslave, and it makes
totally.
What's cool is like listening to this album, I can hear the precursor. There's no way he could have known, but I'm listening to this and I'm just like, this directly leads to him singing a Bond song.
Yeah,
you can hear it. You can hear it. It's just like for a 25-year difference. It just I can actually hear the bridge the gap, which is pretty cool. And not to, you know, before I said like I thought that that Jesus Christ Pose was my least favorite song on the album. And again, I don't think that's a bad thing. There's always one you're going to like the least. The reason to me, I think it's really cool that became a single. I think grunge and metal and punk and all of these things, when you hear those terms, it immediately puts an idea in your head what they sound like. Like I actually, I like grunge, but I don't like Pearl Jam, because to me, Pearl Jam to me sounds like a political cartoon of grunge. It sounds like what your mom thinks music is like, you know?
Totally.
And so this doesn't fit that mold. And the same at the drive-in. Like I'm sure a lot of people think may or not have given At the Drive-In a chance because they're like, oh, I don't like emo, I don't like post-hardcore, and it doesn't sound like everything else. And it's so interesting that the bands that were really influenced by these bands don't pick up the weirdness. They don't find what makes them special and copy that. And it's crazy.
Yeah, it's really nuts because, like, people called Soundgarden like a fucking grunge band, but I think they were just like, well, they're from Seattle.
Yeah.
Like, but
they're either
not
a grunge band or they're a Starbucks coffee, and I don't see anybody drinking Chris Cornell. So
yeah, it was just like, well, they're a band that's popular and from the Midwest, and they do heroin. So
yeah,
but I don't think you can put Soundgarden in a box, which is weirdly what makes also their really. Even though I hate their band name, I think it's a very apt name for the band, because it's literally like, it's just like, this is gonna sound so stupid, it sounds like a fucking garden of sound. Like on every record there's just like something new that they're doing, and it's just like, I don't like, Louder Than Love is my fucking favorite one because it has like it's the Led Zeppelin I've always wanted. It's just big, slow, fucking heavy drums. It's like a really distinct slow guitar riff, but also Kim is just creating all of these like harmonics he's on his guitar that just are swirling around, and then fucking, it's just Chris's voice is just like so sharp and cutting all over it. It's fucking awesome. It's one of the coolest things I've ever heard. And this album is just them trying so many different fucking things with riffs and stuff. It's really fun to see, because I weirdly don't think this album flows very well. I think that it's you can pick out songs, but it's just a shit ton of ideas. Like I think Face Pollution is a very cool song. I think it is a motherfucking mess of a song. I love that there are so many riffs. There's so much cool fucking shit on that song, but like I think what Chris is doing is like really it works, but it is also like clashing really hard with what the instruments are doing. I think it's like, but it's really cool that song exists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I also, like, it was fun to hear, like, him talks about the Rusty Cage riff, and he's like, I just think it's cool that one of the cool things about the riff is it sounds like it's being played backwards.
Yeah.
I think it's cool on this album that there are just so many ideas. Like, it doesn't flow as well as which is why I don't think that it's their best or my favorite, is because they're trying so much stuff that I don't think it flows as smoothly as better albums. And I think like songs like Face Pollution are fucking sick, but they are like Face Pollution is a mess of a song.
Oh yeah, that's why I love it. It's so messy and weird.
It's super messy, and it's cool. But you can tell, and I like that it's rough, but it's like Chris doesn't fit perfectly with the song, like with what he's deciding to do. But that's also what's cool about it, is because it sounds really new and different.
That's cool. Yeah, I really want to check out that album that you said. What was the album before this called?
Louder Than Love. Louder Than Love.
I want to check out Louder Than Love. I definitely want to listen to that, and we'll talk about that. I think you should check out Acrobatic Tenement. It's the first At the Drive-In album, and they're just kids. Like, I think they're like 18 or 19. It's before Omar felt confident playing guitar, so he's just playing bass on it.
Oh, wow.
And it's really weird, and it's kind of jazzy. Like, you can definitely see where like Mars Volta would come from. It's really quick, and it's just a really fun, weird little album. And I love listening to it because it's just, there's something to me that's so special about just like catching big musicians when they were kids, because they didn't know that they were going to be huge. And especially with like punk and metal, like I highly doubt Chris Cornell started playing music knowing that he was going to be gigantic, especially in the 80s when there's no precursor for that album. You know, there's no one could have predicted. I mean, the funniest thing to me about, I had to look up what Badmotorfinger was because I didn't know what it was. Do you know what it is?
I actually don't. I just thought that
it's a parody of Bad Motor Scooter, which is a song written by Sammy Hagar.
What?
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
That makes sense.
Yeah. But that's the precursor to that world of music that he created. Like that, you know, he is one of the forerunners of that kind of music. The same way At the Drive-In, I would say, is the forerunners of
totally
post-hardcore. He probably had no idea that he was going to be the next Sammy Hagar. I think he was a little better than Sammy Hagar, to be honest. But
what, Chris? Yeah.
Chris is really, really cool.
He was he was very cool. He started playing music just because that's just what you did. Like, it's like Seattle around that time. Like, it's weird. Like, he talks about being a kid, and he talks about like in that area of the country, just there wasn't that like I don't know what I'm gonna do with the rest of my life, and like until he played music, he was like he never really had that question, like drive and like drive to succeed at life. What's that word? Ambition, yeah. He just like he comes from a town of just like no ambition, and is just like accidentally creating cool fucking music. And he sees the trajectory of like, he grew up on just like, like metal and stuff, and like remembers hearing Van Halen for the first time and how that took over the fucking world, and then hearing punk and then feeling like he could do it.
Yeah.
Like, that was the coolest thing about punk, is it made you feel like you could create music too.
Yeah.
And that's combining both of those ideas into, it's so weird that his band, like Soundgarden, sounds like so many fucking different things. And that's also what's so cool about At the Drive-In, is they sound like so many different fucking things, but it creates its own thing. Like Soundgarden and At the Drive-In are so many different genres of music that they're their own genre of music by themselves.
Yeah.
I think
what's so interesting about both of them is that they both are kind of that last little ride of like, hey, we don't know how to do anything else other than play music, so we'll get shitty jobs, and we're going to go on tour. We're going to buy a van, and it's going to break down. There's no side hustle where you're a photographer. There's no side hustle where, like you actually work in marketing and you can take your laptop and do social media as you're doing. It's like, no, this is the only thing that we know how to do, and we're going to spend our whole life doing it, Yeah. And it worked out really well for them. And a lot of people, it didn't work out, and that's why we don't really hear their stories. But I think that's kind of these are kind of the last years of that, probably up until like the 2000s. Because I think that what's so interesting about At the Drive-In is that it is probably one of the few albums that shows that aggressive music can have doesn't need to have a shelf life.
Yes,
like,
totally.
Doing the whole 2019 thing, which I'll plug until the end of the year. I'm listening to all this. I'm listening to all this old shit. Some stuff before this album came out. Some stuff afterwards, and a lot of it feels really dated, and it doesn't hold up well. And no one wants to hear that, but it's kind of the truth that a lot of this stuff is like, I don't really want to listen to that now that it's the year 2019. And we all live on the moon. I hope you enjoy that moon beef. It's weird because I don't think I really think that maybe 15 years from now, I'm probably still I could show At the Drive-In to someone, and it would be the equivalent of you showing me this band that was like, we're gonna do Led Zeppelin but different, And I think that's really cool. I think that's cool that louder, more abrasive music can have a shelf life, because Lord knows there is some Nirvana shit that you cannot play for people. They will not. Yeah, they will not have it. which is
For
completely
sure.
different conversation, and one of the reasons I really like Nirvana. But
Well, yeah, I also think that Cedric and Chris write very similarly. Like I think they both write stream of consciousness lyrics. Like Chris famously says that his lyrics are about nothing, but they're all about like wanting to die and do heroin. Like that's every song is about that. Like Spoon Man is about an actual spoon man who would play spoons, but it is also 100% about the heroin.
Yeah. You use spoons for heroin. I've never done heroin, but I know that you inject. You put the spoon right into the vein, right? Is that what you do?
You spoon the heroin into your arm.
Yeah.
Like cereal. But I think like what's cool is they both have very impressive like screams on their album. Like when Chris screams on this album, like on like Slaves and Bulldozers, when he's just like, "Now I know why you've been shaking." Like he's screaming. Like also Cedric is screaming.
Yeah.
Too, and then they both put screaming on like these albums, and then no one does it for a really long time after that, which is nuts. I think it's cool that like you know, that they're both these bands that just want to like try to push genres and push people to like do more stuff, but people just kind of took what they were doing and just and made it simple. Like I hear just where everybody took what they want. I more so with At the Drive-In than Soundgarden. I feel like I looked at Relationship of Command and I saw just like the carcass of an animal that had been picked to death by vultures but just musically. Like I just saw like people were like, we're going to take these chords and then they put them into something shitty and then or like, you know, it's nuts.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Also
weirdly depressing.
My ancestors used every part of the At the Drive-In album, not just not just the effects pedals.
Yeah.
You can get great meat from that breakdown.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's really cool. I also I don't know the trajectory of At the Drive-In like coming back together.
They said 100% that it was for the money.
Really?
Yeah, which I think is actually really cool. Like, because honestly, like, people would be like, fuck them, I can't believe they're doing it for the money. I'm like, dude, they told you they're doing it for the money. No one else is doing that. No one has the courage to say this is purely for the money. Well, they did that. So they reunited in 2013, and then Omar said famously that it was for the money. They played a couple of shows, and then Omar's mom passed away, and he had to play shows still, and it was like he really was not having a good time. So they didn't do it for 3 years, and then they announced they were coming back and putting out an album. And they ended up playing more shows, and Jim Ward didn't come back, and they got some other guy. He was involved with the band beforehand, but I don't really know his capacity. But yeah, so they ended up doing a couple of tours, and they actually put out an album, and it's not bad. It's not my favorite, but it also is 17 years removed from their magnum opus. You know, so much has changed since then, and it's really. I think it's so hard to put out an album after breaking up because everybody has so many expectations for what you're gonna do. It's pretty impossible to please everybody, and if you try to please yourself, chances are you've changed since.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same thing as like we talked all the time about how like if you become famous as a young person, you stay that way. That's why Metallica is the way they are because they all became millionaires when they were in their 20s. So
your maturity stops. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, now you're talking about like a band that famously was driving around the country wearing platform heels and afros. Their van would break down and they would hitchhike to shows. They would play shows for 3 people and put in so much energy. Like every video that you see, they're jumping and kicking and all that stuff. And then to expect that 20 years later that they're going to be exactly the same. And now that they have kids, now they have responsibilities, now that they may or may not have shot a movie that they're never going to release ever, but every one of your fans wants to see it. It's crazy. And also like, especially if you look at the trajectory of like what their music became. So Mars Volta is very much what it is. But what's even crazier is that you're talking about when Omar started in the band, he didn't feel confident to play guitar because he didn't like it. He wanted to play bass. And now he's like, dude, he literally has put out, I think, 40 solo albums. He's a prolific songwriter who puts out so many albums that I've never heard all of them, which is crazy.
Right, yeah.
You know, like I remember being a kid and like he would put out 3 albums a year, 4 albums a year, 5 albums a year, and I'd be like, I have to hear this, I have to hear this. And then eventually there's just so many, it's like I can't learn all these songs.
Up, yeah.
So why even bother, you know? And I'm sure there's some really good stuff that he's put out in the past decade. The last album of his I think I listened to was probably from like 2011, and he had like a very, very young girl from Mexico singing on that album.
Cool.
And it's really good. I have to remember which album it is. I feel like it's a lot like what it must be like when you're 90 and you've been married 6 times and you have 3,000 grandchildren. I cannot remember which one of those albums I like, but I know that I have a favorite.
Where are At the Drive-In from?
El Paso, Texas, which is also where Brooks from War on Women is from, and he was telling me that he was involved with their first couple of EPs, which is really cool.
That's really cool.
And I think he said he played trumpet on a song, and I don't know if that's true. Brooks, if you're listening, you're probably not. Correct me, but yeah, Brooks.
I'm gonna make you listen to this, Brooks.
Yeah, he posted like a throwback Thursday of a digitape of an At the Drive-In recording from 1994, and so the second he was free at Fest, I quartered him and I'm like, tell me about what you did with At the Drive-In. And he was super excited. He's like, oh yeah, I worked on it. They're friends of mine.
Yeah, he's really he that dude just Brooks rules. He just really wants to talk about all you. I feel like I don't want to say this because then people are gonna punish him, but I feel like you can't punish Brooks because he's excited.
No, we should tell the story about Jeremy. We should tell what Jeremy did.
Oh, just drunk Jeremy punishing him about trains?
No, not even trains.
The road system?
No, Brooks is in really good shape. He's a good-looking dude. And Jeremy just is drunk. And this is while we were seeing, I think, Masked Intruder or Get Up Kids. He just walks up to Brooks and he's just like, my man's got a swimmer's body. You a swimmer? And Brooks was like, yeah, I used to swim. He's like, I knew it. You got the body of a swimmer. And we're all like, Jeremy, shut the fuck up, you drunk baby. What are you doing?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's how it started. And then I walked away to say goodbye to the Masked Intruder guys, and I came back, and Jeremy was talking about the transportation system in fucking Baltimore.
Of course he was.
But, okay, you brought up... what I thought you brought up, like the reunion of At the Drive-In, and that it's like impossible to like, and like how it's like kind of sad and they're doing it for the money, and like what I think is really fun about is that like Soundgarden and At the Drive-In have like the same kind of breakup decision. They make their opus. They get big, like Soundgarden, like I think wins a Grammy, and then they break up. Yeah. But what was interesting is why Soundgarden broke up is they saw what was happening to the rest of the rock bands in the world. Like they were like, we're gonna have to tour a lot on this album. Like if we for Super Unknown, like they put out one more album after that, but they were like fuck this, we're gonna have to keep touring and like kind of soaring off of Super Unknown. And they were like, we saw Metallica tour the Black Album for like 4 goddamn years, and that looks like miserable, and what happened to Nirvana and Pearl Jam looks fucking miserable. So they just broke up because they didn't want to tour that much.
That's exactly why At the Drive-In broke up.
Yeah.
They didn't hate each other or anything. They were just like, we literally were touring nonstop for 6 years to get this success, and now we have it, and we need a break. We can't... Because they, seriously, like, if they had probably kept going, they probably could have been the next Foo Fighters, you know? Or, like... Yeah. I say Foo Fighters a lot because... To me, Foo Fighters is it's the best example of like music that everybody likes. Like no one hates the Foo Fighters.
Right.
And they sell out huge shows and people are always excited to see them. I think the Foo Fighters kind of established a baseline of what it means to be a rock star in the world where you're being a rock star doesn't mean getting so high off of drugs that you die and also may have sex with underage people.
Well, there was that article that came out about Dave Grohl's like pre-show drinking habits that are pretty nightmarish, but
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where he like drinks like 700 Coors Lights and a bunch of Jaeger. It's
Well,
bad.
this is America. Everybody drinks. If no one cared about, if anyone actually gave a shit about drinking, they would have cops in bar parking lots being like, "Are you gonna drive?" And they'd be like, "No."
But I also think it's cool that they were bands that left on their opus. But I think the difference between the two bands is At the Drive-In comes back together reluctantly. And then makes an album, and it's like, we got to do this for the money. For Soundgarden, it's like the anniversary of Super Unknown. They haven't even really thought about doing another tour for a while. Like they had a really amicable split of like what to do with the Soundgarden money and stuff, and then they come back together, and they're like, there's like 5 minutes of like weird like. The weird thinking of like, all right, what is this person thinking about right now? And then it just kind of goes back to normal. And then they're touring, and they're happy. They're not thinking about. They don't make another album. They just tour, and they the weird thing that's really sad about Chris Cornell is because of how sad he was throughout his entire life, is just the amount of depression he had, how he didn't let the world really see it other than the lyrics, which he just kind of lied about to everybody. Like when he talks about Black Hole Sun, most of the time he's like, those lyrics are not, they're just stream of consciousness. It's 100% like a metaphor for the feeling of suicide. It's just a suicide song. And it's really depressing. But what I think is the saddest part about it is that in the history of what we know creates a self-destructive rock and roll career, he said no to a lot of those like decisions. Like he created an addiction out of celebrating. Like a lot of his drinking problem came from like he couldn't write fucked up. Like the drugs didn't create his song. He didn't write any of his songs when he was fucked up. He celebrated writing a song by like drinking and getting high. But if you look at it, like he chose to not tour. He got himself sober. He booked, like he made the decisions that are responsible, and it's still caught up with him.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking.
It's really shattering because, you know, for a long time I looked at him as kind of like an inspiration for kind of like how to put yourself kind of back together. Because I was like, this dude, you know, there like I haven't heard Audioslave in a long time. I'm not sure it holds up, but I do. But you know, I looked at a lot of those songs as like, I was like, they're not the greatest, but they seem to be sort of like positive, more positive than the Soundgarden stuff, which might be good for his like mental state or whatever. But now I look at like a lot of those songs like as him getting mad at his old self. Like it seems like he's just kind of yelling at himself at times, or like trying to fight himself, which is really hard. It's just it's rough to see someone yet like make on paper what should be the right and healthy decisions and still and you know can't and not make it.
Yeah, it's really sad.
It's
Sorry, everyone.
Sorry. Yeah, that's. I mean, you gotta talk about.
You gotta talk about.
We're talking about Chris.
You gotta. You know, one of the things that I like about these kind of like one-on-one situations is that we're not like constantly phoning in bits. Not that we're phoning in, but I just mean, you know, we're just like coming up to the stage at Wacky Noodles. It's from 2 minutes to late night. Jordan Olds. Hey, Chris Cornell killed himself, and it's really sad. That's not my impression of you. I don't know what that voice was, but
it's a sad boy. It's what it sounds like
when you get sad.
About how sad I am.
Yeah,
about
it's really sad. No, it's really sad, and
I cried when it happened because it was very shocking, and I had never seen Soundgarden. I was going to go see them because we had shot the first. By that time, we had shot the first 2 minutes episode. We shot the pilot. I don't think it had come out yet, but I was excited to see Dillinger Escape Plan and Soundgarden because that was the tour.
Oh, right. That was the tour. You know what's crazy? Not to change the subject, but I think about how much of my musical influence, like how much the music that I like was influenced by Ben Weinman. Because, I mean, every hardcore kid liked Aphex Twin because it was covered by Dillinger. Like Ben is so crazy because he is also of that like last guard. Like I remember him telling so many stories about how he would tour before the internet, and you just drive to a place and hope they let you play and shit. And it's just And I remember when we did the pilot, we did that joke where we had a game called Bad Google Translation or Grindcore Song. It was either that one or one of the other ones. Maybe it was Name That Croon. And he was just like, I'm going to lose this because I stopped listening to music in 1995. He didn't know anything new. And I didn't realize it, but I was like, oh, yeah, you don't really listen to these bands actively because they were all influenced by you. And I'm sure that he does listen to them, but I don't think he listens to them to the same way as like we have that sponge where we're like, we want to get to know everything that's like the things that I like, you know? Because Ben's stuff that he likes comes from a whole generation before us.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ben had that outlet. Like, we all learned about like Mike Patton because he was on a Dillinger Escape Plan album. Like, let's be like honestly, like he introduced our entire generation to Mike Patton. But the thing is that everybody in Ben's circle liked Mike Patton. Like, Steve has told me about how he's kind of deaf in one ear because he would just shove the real thing. He would just put his head next to a speaker listening to the real thing by Faith No More. Like everybody, just Ben found a way to use the Dillinger Escape Plan as like a true outlet for all of that. Like I'm gonna cover the music that I think is cool and weird, and I'm gonna like. He just opened our eyes to it, like with his stuff, and it was really awesome. Yeah,
it's really cool. It's crazy because I think you and I, and probably a lot of our listeners, are from a very, very, very specific time where a lot of stuff happened really, really quickly, and all I know is like within the same 3-year like period, I discovered at the drive-in. I knew what Aphex Twin was, both because Dillinger Escape Plan covered it, and DVDs were a thing, and music videos on DVDs were a thing, and suddenly you could see all the weird stuff that they didn't play on MTV. And it all converges, probably because of the band Converge. But but I honestly, like, I don't know if we would be making, I don't even know if I would be doing like film stuff if it wasn't for that time period of Dillinger and hardcore and Michel Gondry and just all this weird. No, it was Chris Cunningham who made the Aphex Twin videos. But all this weird stuff that just kind of like all came out at the same time. And
and Dillinger covered Soundgarden. We talked. Yeah, so he probably got our generation of scene kids. I got it in a different way, but I thought the cover was fucking cool. So I'm sure a lot of people got into Soundgarden that way, and they were like, "Oh, this band isn't just Black Hole Sun."
Yeah, but. While we're talking about singles, so real quick, did you find yourself reinventing your opinion of One Arm Scissor? Because it was the single and probably the song that you knew the best of all these songs. Hearing it recontextualized, how it's the third song in kind of like this crazy 3-song opening of the album. Did you find that you appreciated it differently?
I loved the placement of the song. I like, because after the first 2 songs, like once I heard the One Arm Scissor riff, I was like, yeah, this feels appropriate. This feels exactly where this song should be on this album. Yeah. I do also, I think it's because of how good the album is, I also have the same opinion that you do about the Soundgarden album, where because because it's the single, I think it's the weakest song on the album.
That's interesting.
I think that's probably why I think it's probably an incredible song if you hear it just with the album. Like, but I think it also might be the same thing with you. Like, I heard Jesus Christ Posed just as the fourth song on Badmotorfinger. Like,
Yeah.
I hadn't heard it outside of the album. So I just hear it as a piece of it, and I just found out it was the single. I'm like, that's such a fucking odd choice for a single.
Yeah.
It's just all off time. It's just thumping. Like, there's like, he doesn't even hit a snare drum on Jesus Christ Post until like minute 2.
Yeah.
Which is bananas.
Singles are so weird because I don't think I've ever heard a band play their big song and thought, oh, I'm so glad that they saved it for last. Except for Crazy Train when I saw Ozzy, because it's the best. It's the best song and it rules. But I've never been like, oh boy, I'm so glad that this was the very last song that they played. But it's funny because when you go to those album shows, like where they do like a 10-year or 20-year show, and they play it in order, and they are like getting to the tail end of the song, and you're like, they're getting to the tail end of the album, and you can tell like they haven't really played that song. They don't really play those songs, and to end on that song that isn't that big is so funny and so weird.
Yeah,
but
it's really funny.
I saw Every Time I Die in December, and they did like a 20-year retrospective show where what they did was they played 2 songs off of each album, starting with Burial Plot Bidding War. So they opened up with Logic of Crocodiles, and it was fucking amazing. They never play that song anymore. But then the second song they played was Floater, which is their big, that's like the Hey Jude of hardcore. Yeah. It's got the best breakdown. It's awesome. And they played that second. That was the second song they played. It was fucking crazy. I don't think they've ever done that before. And then they finished with all new stuff because they were doing it in chronological order, and they played a lot of stuff off the new album, which I think is really great. And I just like seeing that and then listening to this and thinking about singles, it really makes me think like the way that bands make set lists is for their audience and not always for themselves. And I think that's kind of a travesty,
Yeah, well, it's it is sad. But it's also, I think it becomes a thing where they know, I think bands know what their singles are when they're writing them. They know which ones are going to be the hits in the studio. And so you're kind of prepared to build. I think every band is kind of prepared to build their set list around like, this is going to be the song. Or, they kind of know what's going to happen. And I think there is some travesty to their, like they pick certain songs. They like write certain songs that like, I wish this was the closer. But I think they also know that I think they're also prepared for it. But that's also why they get really sick of their singles, But that's also like a thing with like Soundgarden. Like the weird thing about Badmotorfinger is I don't think they fucking ever ended a show with Jesus Christ Pose. I don't think it ever happened. I don't think any of the singles on this album have ever been a closer.
No.
I don't think Rusty Cage has closed a thing. One thing I think is really cool, this is just because I'm thinking about openers. It's weird that you were talking about like Every Time I Die and like opener. I think it's from like our scene, I think it's very common for when a band puts out a new album, like the first song on the new album is what they open with. One thing I think is cool that Velotalk does is they wrote like an opener on their second album. That is such a good, it's just literally like a 1-minute song that is like, that just builds, it builds all 3 of the guitars and it builds so well and it's a really good opener and that's still their fucking opener.
Yeah. Well, they also have their own theme song, which is insane.
Yeah, which they have to end on. They end on playing Velotalk, the song, every time, which is really, really cool. But they, like it's cool that the front, that their second album will always be like, this is our opener and our closer every time.
Oh, I did want to mention one thing that I think you'll think is really funny. Do you know where At the Drive-In got their name from? At the Drive-In is oh, never mind. I'm wrong. I thought that they got their I thought that they got their lyrics their song name from a Poison song, but I'm wrong.
Oh, where's their name from?
There's a Bad Brain song called "At the Movies," and they changed it for "At the Drive-In." But I always thought that they got "At the Drive-In" from a Poison song.
At the drive-in. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah.
That's super fun.
Yeah, but I don't think they did it on purpose. You know what's the best? The best band name story is Between the Buried and Me, because it's the most metal sounding name in the world. Between the Buried and Me. It's taken from Counting Crows lyrics.
Well, that's also like You Will Know Us by the Trail of Dead is the fucking dopest grind band name ever, and there's just like, I don't know, they're like it's just all clean guitar and lutes.
Yeah.
They're just like a nice little indie band. But You Will Know Us by the Trail of Dead is the fucking most brutal name I've ever heard. And I was like, I bought an album of theirs wanting it to be like some kind of weird ripper. And I still liked it, but I was very surprised. Do you have like, what do you think is the coolest band name, music aside? Like, just like, you hear like the fucking band name and you're like, God damn, that's a cool fucking band name.
I think it would have to be Real Big Fish, because you think that they're talking about how big the fish are, but it's actually REEL. So they were reeling in these giant fish.
We Real Big Fish.
Yeah. I think that's pretty cool.
Wow. I like the band name Mad Ball because I thought it was about an angry tennis ball, but then it turns out it's just about toys. Okay, should I do favorite songs for the At the Drive-In album?
Yeah, do it. Favorite songs. What are your favorite songs, Jorb?
Well, I think the two I was trying to have one, but it's got to be two. I think it's Quarantined or Invalid Litter Dep. I think is the fucking. I think the clean guitar riff on Invalid Litter Dep is awesome. I'm an adult, so I was and having heard like Me Without You, I was like, oh, this is just what they were doing, and also I just never wanted to hear like a guy yell poetry ever again in my life. But this song was great. It was the lyrics were great. I think I fucking loved it. I loved the whole album. I think Arc Arsenal is also a sick fucking opener. It's incredible.
Oh yeah. It's so loud, and just those pounding drums. It's so cool.
Yeah. And just the stops are like the rests are fucking great. I love but yeah, Quarantine also extremely surprising song, just really pleasantly surprising the whole way through.
Yeah, it's just a cool album. I love that album.
Yeah. It fucking rules. It's now one of my like favorite punk albums of all time.
Hell yeah.
Like, when people are like, what do you like from punk? I'm going to be like, I like the Misfits, and then I like At the Drive-In, and then I don't like punk.
And also, I'm 17 years old, and I love Monster Energy, baby.
Yeah.
Inject it right into my femoral artery.
For sure, I'm going to play video games with the...
You can find me on Twitch playing Kirby's Big Adventure while snorting coke.
Yeah.
Should we do Twitch stuff? I was thinking about this the other day.
Yeah, we should.
I'm not really big on video games, but if you're listening to this and you made it this far, would you watch us play video games? Why not?
Yeah, let us
know. You can throw a brick through my window, or you can splatter blood all over my car.
What are your favorite songs on At the Drive-In?
My favorite songs at the Drive-In?
On this album.
On this album, I don't know, because it changes every couple of years, because I've just known it so well. Like, I think Rolodex Propaganda is such a really, really weird song. And it's so just like abrasive and loud and cool. And I gotta say, like, Catacombs to me is the coolest thing, because it starts off with
It's fucking great.
It starts off with that. Hold on, what we're talking about at the drive-in, my cats are fighting, because this is what happens when you listen to At the Drive-In. You get cats.
Thank God. I was thinking about that. Like, if I heard this album at the right time, like, I probably, like, I think this would have changed a lot of like my musical taste, I think, because I just followed guitar riffs when I was like a kid.
Yeah.
But if I heard this at the drive-in as opposed to like In Casino Out and Via, I might have ended up somewhere different, just because of my I feel like the lo-fi, I liked them, I just didn't love them. If I heard Relationship of Command, I 100% would have loved them.
Oh yeah, I think if you had listened to this album earlier, you would be a emo night DJ by far.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, we would. I think our. I think like this might have been just like the landmark that like led me to some of the music that I listened to. Like if I heard this, we probably would have liked every single band the exact same.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that this is like that would have happened. Like I wouldn't have like I liked the Mars Volta a lot because of the guitar playing. That's why, and I followed riffs, but I would have had a weirder palette at this stage had I heard this album, which I think is cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. If only we had known, what would have happened to my life if I didn't have that 2-year period where I listened to only Eminem.
Yeah,
but yeah, this was cool. I'm glad that we talked about this, and it was nice to listen to something that didn't make me have ear diarrhea. And
yeah. What are your favorite Soundgarden songs?
Dude, I thought Rusty Cage was awesome, and it reminded me a lot of Mutoid Man too, which was really cool.
Yeah, I think it's like a similar kind of beefy tune. It's written in B.
Yeah.
So it's very similar.
Yeah, I gotta say my favorites were definitely Rusty Cage, because hearing the first song and it's not what you expect is always the best.
Yeah.
So definitely that. I really liked Face Pollution. Anything with the saxophone I think is dope. I think sax is criminally underused, and that's why Jeff Rosenstock rules.
I agree.
And I think also Room 1,000 Years Wide was really cool. That was a really cool song. I really like this album. Yeah, I really like this album a lot. And also they did a really cool bonus EP, I guess, and they did a cover of Into the Void by Black Sabbath, and it's really good.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
They fucking they rip. I love all the songs. I think like Rusty Cage is just like I'm probably going to cover that song with a band soon.
Hell yeah.
I think also like an underrated song is like Slaves and Bulldozers is really cool. Like I talked about it earlier. I think that song is fucking sick. I think it's one of his most insane vocal performances, and this is a motherfucker who has a shocking amount of like insane vocal performances. Like he, like just when you think you've heard like the peak of it, like I feel like with like an Axl, with like similar vocalists to him, like when you hear like an Axl Rose or like a Robert Plant, like when you hear them sing, like when you hear them hit their like high notes, you're like, it's kind of all that they can do.
Yeah.
But with like Chris, he's constantly shocking you with how strong his voice is.
Yeah.
And how high he can fucking go, or like how intense he can scream.
Yeah, and he still sounded good.
He still sounds good.
He when he got older, he still sounded great. Whereas, like, I don't know if you ever heard anything Robert Plant did in the '80s, but it's very bad. Yeah,
it's fucking bad. But but also every stage of like the Chris Cornell voice sounds fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Listen to Louder Than Love. I think you should listen to Louder Than Love. I think you should also listen to Super Unknown because it's fucking cool. It's just it's another weird fucking album.
Yeah.
These 3 albums, it sound completely different, but it is also shockingly believable that it's the same band. It's just cool to watch a band just evolve, but not into what you think they're going to turn into.
Yeah,
Each album is like, this is not what I thought was going to happen. But I also can see that would happen.
Yeah. I will definitely check that out. Cool, man. Well, thank you for doing this. Thank you for listening to my stuff and humoring me with liking it. I'm really glad you liked it. I'm pleasantly surprised, which is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I thought I was, I'm shocked at how much I loved it. I thought I was going to like it. I didn't know I was going to like fucking love it.
Yeah. That's dope.
Just because of what I've heard before. This is my favorite thing that Cedric and Omar have created together, and I've listened to a couple of their projects, and this is the shit. This just rules.
Yeah, it's great.
It's definitely, both these bands are just like, you wish that music could have evolved from like these guys.
Hey guys, I hope you like this episode. It's we'll go back to the usual shitting and farting and pooping pretty soon. This was a special thing. So we're gonna we just put out I guess by now it's been out for a couple weeks, but if you haven't seen it yet, there's a new episode, 2 Minutes Late Night, the Twosies. We should check that out. The finale will be coming out soon. We'll make more announcements about that. We're also gonna keep doing the podcast, and hopefully we're going to come up with something really cool for Patreon, podcast-wise. Who knows what it'll be? Maybe we'll kill a bird on camera.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff with the podcast while we kind of figure out where the show's going to go. We're going to be doing other stuff with, like, the actual show, but, we're going to be putting more of our energy into the podcast once the season is done. We're gonna do that. We're gonna do a fun episode where we like live stream us making battle vests. We're gonna do that crafting video. Please join us. It'll be a really lovely afternoon of just everybody making a nice piece of clothing for themselves or their dog. I'm probably gonna make a battle vest for my dog.
I think that's very lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Jordan Olds. Donate to our Patreon. Also, watch. I've never done this on this show, but watch Nobody's Watching Wrestling. It's a show I produce where drag queens review wrestling like it's RuPaul's Drag Race, and it's really funny.
It's great, and I don't watch wrestling. It's not my thing, even though a lot of you send me wrestling memes, and I just go ha ha because I don't want to break the kayfabe. Is that how you pronounce it? Kayfabe. But it is very funny.
In drag, it's gayfabe.
Gayfabe. I do watch Nobody's Watching Wrestling because it's very funny. The queens are very funny, and it's good, and you should check it out.
Yeah, we just put out an Effie with former guests of 2 Minutes to Late Night. Effie, and I think it's genuinely one of the funniest episodes we've ever done because it's just really, it's a guy just talking about his job. And not like it's actually right.
That's so funny.
Which is really funny. We're putting out a second episode with him, which is also really funny. He's just in there just like breaking the rules and like talking shit about wrestling. He's fucking great. He's just a really good person.
When you're at the coffee machine and there's no grounds in the machine, and also someone choke slams you through a table. The worst. Mondays, am I right?
Yeah. That's literally, that's him just like talking about just like when people try to make wrestling too much, like to like fake wrestle. He's like, we're faking fighting, but now we're faking fighting, and it's too much.
That's really funny.
And it seems like it's just his normal Twitter rant.
Yeah, that's funny. You guys you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at @diet_hellboy. My photography account is Drew Kaufman Photography. Also, check out 2019 on Metal Injection, which was officially a weekly thing. And I just did From Mom to Ashes. Now I'm going to talk about He's Legend, which also, while we're here, Jordan, I owe you a huge apology. 4 years ago, He's Legend put out a new album called Heavy Fruit, and you were really excited about it. And I said, I don't care. And I was so wrong. That album is so great.
It's cool.
It's really good. I owe you a huge apology. It's a really good album. And the album they put out last year is really good too. I think
dude.
He's Legend is the most underrated band of the scene, if I had to say it.
Yeah, well they were really creative. I always liked it because they were really crafty with how they used scene tropes.
Yeah.
Like they used like goofy spots in really interesting ways. They like reappropriated rock and roll riffs in a really fun and groovy way, and then they just transitioned into like, and we're a desert rock band.
Yeah,
and I was like,
crazy,
cool, man.
Yeah, we might have to do an episode talking about He's Legend because I've got a lot to say. So check out my review, and I don't know. Don't forget to vote. Ever.
Yeah. Vote tomorrow.
Do it. It's
For
your
something.
right as an American. Unless you're not American, then it's not
Go
your
to where
right.
you think your voting place is and just give yourself a sticker and vote for something.
Go into a grocery store and scream socialism at all the tomatoes.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.